from the heart. Stories honest and true. The one, the only. The human canvas, you. Hello and welcome to The Human Canvas, the podcast where we explore our unique lived experiences, exploring the lives of people from all walks, diving into their unique journeys, their challenges, their passions, and the moments that have shaped who they are today. I'm your host, Nicholas Graham Hall, and today I'm honored to welcome metal detecting enthusiast Bart Smith to the podcast. I'm here with a former colleague of mine back in my Ernst & Young days, EY days, Bart Smith, Bartholomew, Bart Smith.
Yeah.
You
So
can
I only
tell
get
right
called that when I'm in trouble.
Well, you're not in trouble here, that's for sure. So I wanted to talk to you can tell from Bart's accent that although he lives in Nashville, Tennessee, he's not originally from Nashville, Tennessee. That's not a southern accent that you hear there. Bart, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Portsmouth, England. So it's kind of 60 miles southwest of London. It's where what remains of the Royal Navy is located. And Charles Dickens was born there and not much else. Yeah.
And Bart Smith.
Right, and me, yeah, that's right.
So 60 miles southwest, for those of us that are geographically challenged, which is pretty much everybody here in the United States, where does London sit relative to England? And so then where you're from sit kind of like relative to, like, how close are you to the water?
Sure. So Portsmouth is on the south coast opposite France on the English Channel. And that was the location that many Americans departed to liberate Europe. So all of the D-Day troops you see in Saving Private Ryan and so on, or Band of Brothers, they went through Portsmouth. That was the great departure, was from there.
Oh, fantastic.
And yeah, I mean, London's the capital of the United Kingdom,
right?
And I guess by default, England. Yes.
Yeah, so I'm glad I was willing to expose my lack of geographic knowledge.
I think if you asked many British people, they wouldn't be able to explain to you the difference between what is Great Britain and what is the United Kingdom. The answer is Northern Ireland, but let's not.
Fortunately, that's not the purpose of our conversation today. Something that I wanted to talk to you about today was something that you and I have chatted about before, but more just kind of casually. And I wanted to dig in and ask you more about it, literally dig in. And that is this particular passion you have for digging in the dirt. But not digging in the dirt just to dig dirt, but you have a very specific task in mind when you go and do this digging. And one thing I'm gonna let you help me and the audience properly, because I know you wouldn't call it, hey, I'm going to dig in the dirt. There's a term for it. So why don't you share with us a little bit about the passion that I'm referring to?
Sure. So my hobby is metal detecting. So my objective is to go out to a field, to a beach, anywhere I'm allowed, and to scan the ground with a detector. You may have seen people like this on the beaches, beach combing, they call it, in the morning, early morning. They're finding jewelry and modern things. But I'm after the old stuff. My target is things generally older than 300 years. That's what really excites me. So we're starting with, George III and the War of Independence, and then further back. So go all the way to the Iron Age when they were making the first coins.
Now, so is it primarily, so then because of how far you want to go, how far back you're interested, is then your primary target likely to be coins?
Yes. I mean, the apart from trash and junk,
right? Yeah.
The main thing you're typically after are coins. Yeah.
And is your metal detecting thus far? I mean, I know you've been in the States for a while, but is your focus in the metal detecting time when you go back home?
Yeah, I spend a suspicious amount of time in the fields when I go back to see my family, shall we say. I do enjoy seeing my family, but we have the saying, guests and fish both stink after 3 days. So if I'm with my family for 3 weeks over the summer or winter, then it's a great way to get some fresh air and some space between my family. I think they appreciate probably a bit of space too. So I'm just out there digging, getting some exercise.
And so what do you remember your first dig? Like what? So what? I mean, what? There's millions of things of hobbies,
Mm-hmm.
interests that we all could have. So what on earth? And things we can do to get a break from our family. What on earth inspired you? Do you remember like your first sort of inspiration?
Yeah. Well, I'm a history major, politics and history.
Okay.
And my friend Mark lives in Canada and was telling me about I think it was a 1700s button that he found in a crick when he was detecting. And I thought, well, I mean, where I come from, there's an ancient Roman temple 2 minutes walk from my house. I mean, imagine what I could find there in the ground if I could just have a look around. And I thought, well, I almost felt sorry for my friend in Canada just because there's a limitation on the amount of
Right.
the amount of time you can go back, usually into metalworking in North America. There was some ancient metalworking, but not much. I think on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, one of the tribes was using copper, but really it's limited. You're going to go back to the 1700s, maybe the 1600s if you're lucky, but and so I thought, well, wow, I should have a go at this. So I said to my friend, so what do I need? And there's lots of different metal detectors you can buy, ranging from $200 up to $2,000. And he said, okay, this is what you need. You need this, a good shovel, and so on. And so I got that. I just ordered it, and it arrived in the mail. And then my first dig was in the park in Chicago. I found some very things. I didn't find Roman coins there. I found a 9mm bullet casing. I think I found a trashy silver ring, and I was very excited to find a 1946 wheat penny. So little did I know what else would be in store when I got back to England.
So that means that everything that you ordered, you actually traveled back to England with
Yeah,
it.
there's quite a lot of. I mean, I don't take a shovel with me. There's things I can just leave in the UK, and like all my wet weather gear, I leave that there. But the detector originally I had to put in my suitcase, and it's always a bit iffy traveling with a detector. It's an unusual piece of equipment.
Right.
If someone gets that out, the TSA, like, why have you got this strange rod with a computer on one end and lots of wires? And you're like, well, it's a metal detector, but they're collapsible, and you need to take the disc part that you skim over the ground off. And no, nowadays they've got kind of collapsible stems and that sort of thing. And I just leave it back in the UK, because after what I found there, the US sadly doesn't really compare. It's just a completely different level of finding things,
And so you said the range of 200 to 2000, where'd you decide to?
I think, I mean, in the US, if you're getting a sports car, right, you could get the Ferrari or the something like that's multi-million, right? But you've got these kind of core, you call them American muscle cars, right? I don't know. Mustang, is that a good example?
Yeah, sure. Mustang, yeah.
It can go fast, and it does the basics of what you need if you're going to race somebody at a traffic light.
Right.
He told me to get a particular model called an Equinox 800, and this was kind of the entry-level detector if you're serious about this.
Gotcha.
So I'm not spending that. I don't need a multicolored map and GPS tracking, but I do want something that goes seriously deep in the ground, with the penetrating signals, and I do want something that can tell me lots of information about what I'm finding. And probably most importantly, I do want something that can tell me the difference between iron and other metals, because so much of what you discover, if you don't do that, is going to be nails and pieces of plow and rubbish. So if you can hit those key things and pay a reasonable price, that's a great place to start. And so that's what I did.
And so what are the signals purely sound, or is it sound plus there's some visuals? It's showing you, colors or something to kind of give you an idea of what it is that it's hitting on.
Yeah, all detectors, you'll get a sound, and the really good detectorists, when it's kind of like drunk bowling, not that I've ever done that, but you kind of, if you think about something less and just sort of are there in the present, you can actually get quite good at it if you just let your autopilot take over. So if you just listen to the sounds and swing the coil over the ground as you walk, you hear something, you think, oh, that sounded quite good, that sounded different, and then you'll dig it. And so the really good detectorists have learned the difference between perhaps something that sounds sharp and loud and nasty, which would be a piece of trash, and a soft, faint kind of echoing, perhaps kind of a silvery tone. And so you get to kind of hear things and think, oh, that sounds good. I like that.
And so, I mean, part of that, like anything, is just it takes experience. It takes hearing a sound and then going through and finding what you find.
Yep.
And over time, kind of
you amass that knowledge. Yeah. But now though, you get a number. I mean, on modern detectors, you'll get a number that, and it will range from 0 to 100. And if you got 100, that tells you it's either a really big thing that you found, or it's a very conductive thing. So perhaps a small piece of copper, that could be a big number, or it could be just a really large piece of bronze, like a pot, or but it's really big. And then if I found like a number like a 6, that could be an air gun pellet. It's really tiny. Or it could be
knowing what you're searching for, which is ideally coins. And I want to talk to you more about coins specifically in England. But is there is there a particular number or number range that you kind of found that's
and you get excited when it pops up. You think, oh, okay, this is, I got a gold coin at that number once, and so maybe this is but there's always variety in the older things. Older things weren't standardized. They were typically made by craftsmen, women, and they would be a great variety of quality. And if you think about metals, the metal casting and metal smithing in the past, the purity of the metal wasn't like today, where if you get an iron thing for a tool, it's going to be really good quality. It's going to be pure.
Right.
But back then, there was all kinds of impurities in the metal, especially with the earliest casting and things like that. So that means that the number can vary. Maybe you find a Roman coin that was made in Britain on a sort of provincial outpost, and they really didn't have very sophisticated metal smithing and so on, and so they kind of just made do of what they could get, and they call those provincial or auxiliary mints. And so those numbers, you just never know. Versus something in Rome, where it's going to be absolutely beautiful, pure silver and very standard.
And does the metal detector help you determine how deep you might have to potentially?
Yes, you get on my screen, for example, I get a number of triangles or chevrons, and every chevron is about 2 inches. And the maximum is about 5. So, if I get 5, I know it's actually probably deeper than 10 inches. It's going to be quite deep. You can go down to about 2 feet if you're lucky. If it's a wet day where the ground is absolutely soaked, you can get deeper. So the wet ground is your friend. If it's dry, the less things come up. The signals go much deeper when it's wet.
Oh, interesting.
Electricity conducts in water, right? So if the ground is also compact and you've got the water in it as well, there's that many more sort of particles, I guess, for the signals to pass through or something like that. So yeah.
Now, how do you get? What's it? How do you like? How does it like? How many people are there out there metal detecting? How do you? I mean, do you focus on public space versus private? Like, how do you? I would think there's some guidance in terms of where at least it's more likely to find stuff than others.
Yeah, we're quite lucky in the UK because we have the Crown Estate, it's called. So the royal family are quite generous in giving us access to public beaches and so on. That technically the Crown owns everything, right? But they let you do what you want with detecting and so on their land. So if I find a silver coin on the beach that's medieval, that they don't claim it. You can have it, and you can go there. But it's just as well because in the UK there's much less land. I think the UK or England is about the size of New England, so there's 58 million people living in a bit of land smaller than California, and so I think originally not many people owned the land. The lords did. It was feudal, right? Today, about 25,000 people own 80% of the land. So finding a landowner is really like finding hen's teeth. Is very difficult. If you find a landowner, you really want to treat them very well. You want to nurture that relationship. And ultimately, if they trust you to go on their land, that's a big privilege because they're trusting you to report everything you've found, to shut the gates, especially if they're farmers, and not to leave great big socking holes in their land for, cattle and horses to fall into. So, it's a big deal.
When you're detecting, about how long have you been at it now?
Since 2019. So compared to most detectorists, actually, we've been doing it for decades and doing it with equipment that came out of the Ark. I'm quite a newbie, but I'm quite fanatical about it, I guess. So I've racked up quite a lot of hours just because when I'm on my vacation, I'll be out there every day.
Yeah. So when you go back at this point, are you primarily searching on private land because of relationships you've made?
Yeah, I've been very fortunate in that I started off with we call them permission. I had a really good permission or piece of land of about 10 acres. And that kept me happy for the first 2 years, believe it or not, because you might think, you'd walk over a piece of 10 acres, in a couple of years easy. But actually, every time they plow that land, it's a whole new field because new things come up. Maybe the plow hits a pot full of coins, and then suddenly you find coins dispersed all over the field in a pattern. So I always take the GPS coordinates of anything I find, and then I can map everything and see by the season what happens when the plow goes one way versus the other way.
Is there what's the expectation, if any, when what's the process if you find a coin? Is there an expectation of a registration? Is there a database?
There is. It's a good question. So there is, but the UK law is really quite sensible. Some countries have a blanket ban on metal detecting. Ireland, you really can't detect unless you have some archaeological permit. I think Romania as well. So people in the end go detecting illegally, and often what they find is never reported. And so as a result, the history is lost, and so you'll never know. But the UK has a very sensible policy where if you find an object, not a coin, but an object that's made of precious metal, more than 10% silver or gold, for example, and in some cases bronze, that you have to report. and you give it to the county coroner, which is a bit archaic. You think of these coroners dealing with births and deaths and registering things, but they also take in treasure requests and process that. So you end up, handing over, maybe you found a silver thimble from the medieval era. That has to be recorded, and they'll take it off you, and it might be there for 6 months to up to 2 years while the museums and authorities deliberate whether they want to keep it. But if they do keep it, and this is the good thing about the rules, they have to give you the amount of money that it would be worth and the market rate. So if that thimble was worth $2,000, based on a previous auction of a similar thimble, that's what they would give you. And then typically, most landowners I've come across ask for 50%. So
50 or 15?
50, half.
50.
Yeah. So it's if you love the history like I do, and you're not really in it for the money, which I think is probably most detectorists, because you're not going to make a lot doing it. Trust me.
Right.
Unless you get very lucky. You actually, it's kind of counterintuitive. You're going out there to find treasure, but you actually end up cutting a check for quite a lot of money at the end of the holiday to the farmer. So they're the ones that actually, leave with the riches. You get to keep a lovely bit of history. But to me, it's
Yeah. I mean, I suppose for them, as long as the land ultimately is not harmed for its purpose, there's not a huge risk to them.
No.
Now, I'm curious with the coins. What have you learned about coins? What are things that you've learned that you didn't know? Like, I'm trying to imagine, could they did they have different value? How did they determine the value? Like, how were they used when?
Well, the first thing
making their own coins. Right.
Well, the first thing I found out about coins is that 2 or more is considered a hoard. It doesn't, if you think I discovered a hoard, you imagine like a treasure chest, and then with the leprechaun dancing around all the gold. No, 2 coins in the ground of the same period. So if you find 2 medieval coins, that the museum or the authorities consider a hoard, and 3 or more really. And I think in treasure law, there's a specific number, not much. You have to report that too. So.
What was put on typically in the kind of coins that you're looking for? What data is actually on the coin to, that signifies, and what is it? Yeah, what does it signify? What data is on the coin and what does it mean?
So the first coins, the really early ones that are Iron Age, so we're talking BC up to about 100 AD. So you could go far back as 1000 BC, I think, and they're using coins, especially on the continent. Britain was a little bit behind the times. I think they took them to about 200 BC to get coinage, and their coins have horses on. That's the main thing that they have on. Horses, kernels of wheat, sometimes gods. So they're in I think inspired by the Greek culture. So you have sort of Alexander the Great and all these kinds of characters of gods, and they kind of adopt them and make them their own. So you get these different figures and mysterious kind of beings with heads and eyes, and it's really cool. You just you can look at one Celtic coin and think, wow, they were on a really bad acid trip or something, because I don't recognize anything on that coin. It's just a load of swirls and dashes and a horse right in the middle. It's very abstract. You can clearly see a very different kind of mind, and not a modern mind, designed. I think, what do they call it? The dies. They call it the die. The thing that's really hard metal that they slammed with a hammer against the moldable gold or silver, to make the imprint in the metal. So whoever designed that die, I mean, that was a really different mind to the way you and I think. With lines and symmetry and angles and things like that. And a very different kind of perspective. And then if you go on to the Roman world, it just changes dramatically. You get these beautiful portraits side on of the Roman emperors that are lifelike. You can absolutely see, how Julius Caesar's nose was. It's not just looks like a stick painting, or something like that.
Right.
So the detailed artwork is incredible. I can't really do it justice in describing, what school of art these sculptors came from.
But you really have a sense of what the person looked like.
Yeah. And then after 400 AD, the Romans left. They left Britain very suddenly, about 408. The British, Romano-British people wrote to the emperor at the time, I think he was Honorius, and said, we need soldiers, we're getting raided by barbarians, this isn't good. And he wrote a letter back saying, thoughts and prayers, good luck. We can't spare any troops. And after that, basically, people said, well, why are we sending you taxes? And so and then basically all Roman claims to Britain ended. Lots of people left. And so did the coinage. It's kind of like Mad Max. People go back to bartering, trading commodities. Certainly the towns became, abandoned, and people are living on these kind of rural estates. And eventually everything falls into disrepair, and the Saxons turn up. So you get these tribes from Scandinavia and parts of Germania, and they're coming over here. And many of them were invited by the Romans left in Britain for protection, but then they decided to stay. But they bring these really strange coins. It takes another 200 years for coins to be used again. So, I mean, that's why we call those times the Dark Ages. The medieval times weren't the dark. Yeah, the medieval times weren't really the Dark Ages. The Saxon times, they call it early medieval. So, 400 to about 600, 700 AD. That's the Dark Ages, because coinage stops with that. We don't really know about financial transactions, about trade routes. So much information is lost. They certainly weren't writing very much.
So how were coins like now? I mean, today it's like, we use our coins to buy a sandwich. How were they used differently in the sense that, like, I can't imagine that someone that just has the ability to make a coin all of a sudden can trade that for a bushel of wheat.
Right. It definitely reflects a whole new way of transferring wealth and so on. In medieval times, it's really interesting because they would often mess around with the quality of the silver of coins. So you can kind of trace how the kingdom is faring by the amount of tin and dirty things that they put in the coins. So Henry VIII was known as Old Copper Nose because his coins, the first thing that would rub and the silver would wear off was his nose on the coin. So he was very fond of wars and grand palaces and things. So he diluted the currency and the quality of it horrendously, and he got into a really sorry state. People would cut the coins in half for small change. So it's kind of weird. You're cutting the head of the king in half and saying, well, here's a penny. I've cut it in half. Here's half a penny. So it's like taking a $10 note, tearing it in half and saying, well, here's $5,
Right.
That's what they would do with the coins. And so often you dig up half coins, quarter coins. And you were asking earlier what you can tell from a coin. Well, the medieval coins are really cool because those they often look the same because the portrait of the king is still pretty crude compared to the Romans. The art is not the most sort of lifelike representation of the rulers. They look kind of like finger paintings with curly hair and a crown, basically, for a good several hundred years. But around the side in Latin kind of text is abbreviations for who minted the coin, so you can know the name of who was the mint master, and then also where it was made. So I can find a coin and tell you Walter of Canterbury made this coin. And that's really cool. So there's a real lovely echo of the past. You wonder, well, how long were they there at that mint? And so the historians have a great time cataloguing all the different mints that existed and who was working in them or who was managing them. And you can tell that all from the coin.
And so how big are the coins? Like, they vary in size significantly?
Yeah, they do. Especially the Roman ones. I mean, their coins they go from sort of things about the size of I don't know, the diameter of an egg, down to like a depondus, that would be down to what they call minims, and they're smaller than your thumbnail. So you imagine how easy that would be to lose a tiny piece of silver that's no more than a centimeter in diameter.
Did
And
they have did they have considerably did they actually carry a lot significant value relative to um yeah, I guess I'm
yeah,
just
oh yeah,
trying to
absolutely.
imagine like today we've got pennies in the US, pennies, nickels, quarters, and you've got $100 bills. So I mean I guess there is a
Yeah.
range. I'm just kind of curious sort of what the coins
Yeah, they represent the literal amount of silver and gold you see, and so they would have coin weights, and they would, you're basically talking about a penny's worth of silver weighs this much. And I think the purity of the Roman coins in the good days, when they had the height of their empire, are incredible. They're sort of 97% pure silver, but then when the empire is limping along, they get some really shoddy silver dipped coins. So they were getting, basic copper coins and dipping them in the silver. So they definitely weren't representing the value of the actual metal. And then you start, you start seeing, in I guess the copper coins and things that aren't really worth the metal they're imprinted on start in Georgian times. That's when they start making the first copper coins that it's not really worth what it.
yeah.
And then
Now
bank.
when you find something and what's the what are what what's the like should I dig, shouldn't I dig?
Oh yeah, it's kind of playing poker, right? Because if you dig every signal, you're never going to find much. Um, but the cool thing is, some of the best detectors out there now. Going back to your earlier question about what you get for information, the best ones, like the one I have now, thankfully, actually shows you the shape of what you've found under there. So I can see a circle on my dial, and depending on where the circle's located, how high it is on the chart, I can tell if it's definitely iron or not iron. So if I have something in the middle of my screen, I know that's absolutely not iron. It's not trash. And if I see it circular, then I'm definitely digging that hole. And then I can see the number. So I'm thinking, 20s to 30 is the number. That's often silver medieval coins. And so if I get a 2030 signal with a certain kind of beat, maybe not too loud, just soft enough, then I'm digging that hole. It's actually very hard not to dig a hole if you get a signal that's repeatable. All signals you dig are repeatable, and that's really the minimum. You want something where you scan your coil, the round part of the detector, over that part of ground, and you keep getting back that same sound. That's really what you want. And if it says it's not iron, then I'm digging. And leaving something, you always think when you get back home, what if that was the gold coin? What if that was the hoard? And that would drive you mad. It's much easier just to dig it out and not wander. I've had days where I'm just digging endless amount of what they call moo tubes. They're like super glue containers, and they're full of medicine. And the farmer, they're like that kind of metally plastic, bendable metal that a super glue would be in. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about? And
Yeah.
they put that behind the cow's ear, I think. Put the medicine behind the cow's ear, and they just drop the tube. And so that I was in one field where they were digging up hundreds and hundreds of these moo tubes, and the number for the moo tube was 44 every time, because it's the same it's the same shape, same quality.
Right.
So I would not dig a 44. You absolutely know what you're going to get. 44 is don't dig it. So that's when I wouldn't dig.
It sounds like you've upgraded metal detectors since you started.
Yeah.
How many upgrades have you
Only one, but it was a big jump. I went from this really good detector that was about $800 and served me for several years. It gave me the number and it gave me the tone, And with that, I was able to kind of tell what was iron and what wasn't. The trick was if I got the same number every time, it was often not iron. If I got different numbers, like I went from a different angle to the ground, maybe I scan it and it goes 30, and then I walk back to the same spot from the other direction, I'll get 12. And I think, oh no, that's not very consistent. But if I get the same number every time from every angle, every direction, then that's what you dig. The detector I've upgraded to is called the Manticore, made by the same company, and this is pretty much the latest and greatest. That is the one where they're starting to show you the shape of what you've found, give you the number, and then wherever the shape on the graph is, if it's on the middle line that goes across the horizontal of a screen, you just know it's not iron, and it's amazing. You can get
that. It sounds like that's a technological leap that was a good worthwhile investment.
Game changer, absolutely. And I'm you see people who don't have the latest machine and they still have a good go at it. I mean, because at the end of the day, if you don't walk over it, you're not going to find it. So you could be the best detector there is and have the best equipment, but if you're on a crap field that has nothing in it but moo tubes, guess what you're going to find? But if I walk over a sacred site that was once a Roman temple and has never been dug before, even with the worst detector, I'm going to probably find something.
So over how many you've talked about, you go home for 3 weeks, and so there's a period of time you're spending detecting. How many of these kind of 3-week trips have you had where you've been able to spend that amount of time detecting?
So I kind of hoard my holidays or vacation, and then basically every summer since 2019 I've been out, and then every winter I get a couple of weeks, because of public holidays and so on. You can arrange your dates carefully, and you get what is effectively 3 weeks in very different weather. I mean, it's pretty wretched. It's sort of windswept and peeing down with rain, but I still love it. In fact, I probably prefer winter detecting to summer detecting because it's much easier to regulate your temperature.
Sure.
And as in Britain, it's because we're so much higher on the in the latitude on the Earth. It gets darker much quicker in the evening, so it gets dark about 4 p.m., pitch black, and because of that, you kind of have to leave the field. So in the summer, it's very hard to leave the field and go back for tea and be sensible.
Right.
You just want to stay until the sun goes down at 9:30. In Britain, in the winter, it's a lot nicer because you think, okay, I really do need to go home. It's pitch black now.
Yeah.
And there's a storm, and I'm not going to find anything, even though I probably could. And go back and spend time with the family. So it's much less of a conundrum,
What's been like what's been with one of those trips? What's been your biggest haul? Like, what's like, man, that was a good, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, whichever. But that was like, I was on fire. I was fine. I was hitting it.
Last winter was pretty good. I don't know what it was, but I have this field that's one of my favorites, and they were growing beets, sugar beets for the sheep, and whatever happened that day, I couldn't go wrong. I was just digging up all this Tudor silver from the 1500s. So bing, 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 bing. I just pulled up several coins, and you might find, one coin for a whole day's worth of work. And I found three, and then I found this beautiful silver dress hook. So it was a hook. If you think of Shakespeare's time when they had the fluffy, frilly collars and all these kinds of things, that kind of period costume, the big gowns and dresses, these would hold the women's garments back to reveal the different layers of the beautiful fabric. And so it was one of these, and often they're in bits because the plows hit it. And this was absolutely perfect. And it had all these different it was like a bauble you would hang from a Christmas tree with all the intricate decorations. And then on the last day of the trip, I found a gold coin. which is quite rare. I mean, I've known detectorists that have detected for 30 years and they've never found gold. So it's a big deal.
I've been playing golf for 45 years and I haven't had a hole in one yet. So to me, it's probably it sounds pretty comparable, right?
Yeah.
You know? Yeah.
A great comparison. I found gold and people were, stopped and they were calling their friends on the phone and saying, Bart's found a gold coin. So it's great. I was really enjoying that. And
now, how long ago was that you found it?
That was in January of this year.
So for example, the story you told earlier, is that then with the coroner? Is that with, like, they're considering whether or not that'll go to the museum, or,
I got back actually really quickly. I don't know what it was, but maybe they're drowning in Celtic coins from 15 AD, pure gold, and it was this beautiful gold coin about the size of your thumbnail called a quarter stater, and it had three men on a boat on one side, but these are like blobs on a boat-shaped blob. And then on the other side, it had a thunderbolt. And so the coin's called a Hampshire thunderbolt. And that would go for maybe $800 on a good day. So it's really cool finding one of those and having the local name, because I was in Hampshire. There are so many different designs of coin made by the local tribes. So it's really cool.
So that's in your possession.
Yeah, I have that in my collection. Yeah.
And out of curiosity, what do the farmers expect if they don't keep the coin, and so you just get the physical coin back?
Yeah.
Whatever it is, what do the farmers expect, or the landowner, do they expect anything?
They would. In that case, I was on a club dig. So you join a club, and you join the club not just because of the social side of it. Sometimes on your own, but the club means they have permissions that you can go on. So you get a bit of variety, a new place every now and then. It doesn't hurt, does it? And you can learn things from the other detectorists. People swap tips. And but on that day when I found that gold coin, the point is I was on a club dig. So you pay $20 for the privilege of being there. And anything under $1,000 you keep. If it's over 1,000, you go halves. So it was just under the threshold, and I got to keep it all. So that was especially good. So, yeah.
Now, how many roughly how many coins ballpark have they retained that you've turned in thus far?
None. I've been incredibly lucky. I think one of the things is the British Museum has an awful lot of different coins. So really, it's got to be a unique coin that they've never seen before, or something where they've only got limited numbers. So I know somebody that found an Iron Age coin, a silver coin, and there had only been 4 of them found. So the British Museum, I think, thought it would be a good idea to acquire this, and they got £800, so about $1,000, and actually they were a bit miffed, because they thought should be worth about $2,000.
Gotcha.
So the trick is, if you do find anything special like that, is to get it privately valued, because then when you'll go back to the government and say, actually, I disagree with your valuation, you've got evidence. So they learned the hard way, unfortunately, with that one.
Yeah, exactly. So you were it's September, so you were just there recently, yeah?
Yeah, I was out there for 3 weeks in August.
And how was your last dig?
It was great. I found I was with an archaeology crew, actually, which is really weird. Archaeologists and metal detectorists traditionally don't mix, because the archaeologists are there doing the painstaking work and doing, scanning the ground and digging trenches with the little duster and the trowel and painstakingly taking off layers of soil over weeks. And then the detectorists just turn up, get a signal and dig a hole and instantly find all this sort of very satisfying results, right? So it's kind of long-term satisfaction, or what do they call it? Return on your time versus instant gratification versus long-term gratification. But they let me come along with them, and I helped them do their scanning. And then in return, they shared some of the data from their archaeology and said, could you scan these bits and tell us if you find anything? And I did. I found quite a lot of Roman stuff along the tracks they pointed out. And then the other side of a property in another field, I was finding lots of silver medieval coins on a field that's, they call it ridge and furrow, I think it's called. It's where you can see an ox cart, has been a horse and cart, ploughing, horse plough.
Yeah.
And so you can see the little ridges across the field if you look very carefully. And then you're in a good place, because there's been lots of medieval farm workers probably out there losing their coins and belt buckles and all kinds of and I was pulling up all kinds of beautiful medieval artifacts. I found brooches and buckles. Most of them have no value really, but I love just the history of it.
You know what? Yeah, you're reading my mind. I was going to ask you, so you've shared these, like the experience with the archaeologist and being a history major.
Mm.
I'm curious, um, do you see yourself like, do you have like a sense of going in more of that direction of collaboration of your detecting with your passion for history? Is purely like, is the satisfaction still like with the metal detector on the land, search,
Yeah,
looking
I'm
for it.
a bit
Yeah.
of a magpie. I like the shiny things, so I do like to. I don't think you have magpies in America, do you?
I know the term magpie, but yeah, I don't.
These kind of black and white kind of striped birds, and they love
Oh,
shiny things in their nests. So if you have a ring on a picnic table, they'll definitely swoop down and take that. So yeah, there's a bit of that. I like the shiny things and finding all kinds of different stuff. So I don't think I'll ever lose the buzz. When you've got the buzz for that, there's the
so there's still that the thrill of the thrill
yeah,
of the hunt is
yeah,
the pure hunt is still
that's
there.
that's right. But I think, to your point, I think that is the direction that archaeology is moving in. Archaeology and metal detect archaeologists are using metal detectors now as a tool, rather than shunning them and thinking these are kind of barbarians coming in on our site and wrecking everything and ruining all the evidence. And it's kind of like
Yeah.
a crime scene almost. When you find something, there's say you find a load of coins in a jar. If you just put your hand in the jar and take the coins out, you then lose, well, what order were they put in? Was this a rushed burial? How long? What are the layers of dirt over it? Do they tell us how many centuries it's been there? So a detectorist, if they're not careful, can just lose all that. And now detectorists are being educated on what to do if they find these things, and to appreciate the significance of the data that comes with the finds. And so there's a lot of detectorists now who are doing a really good job getting the word out there about what you need to do as a responsible detectorist. And in turn, the archaeologists are being much more inclusive, shall we say, with being open to the community contributing and really, it's silly to shun such a useful tool for finding evidence that goes along with your archaeological theories.
Have you ever thought, maybe I should have been an archaeologist?
No, I think so. I don't know. I think it's like I used to work in politics, right?
Yeah.
Communications and marketing of another sort, perhaps a
Yeah.
work product. But if that's all you can do, if that's your life,
Yeah.
and it's your passion, that's great. But if you maybe want to break from it, you can't get off the ride. So
Yeah.
I think
You kind of like it. You like it as a hobby,
I like it as a hobby.
passion hobby.
I think it would be cool to work in that field, but I'm not so sure it would pay and renew. Would be
Right.
as good as a lot of professions. I think a lot of countries don't adequately fund their heritage departments, and they're so you see a lot of people who are definitely in that job for the passion. They're not in it for the. You don't become an archaeologist because you want a house and 2 holidays a year in Barbados. You're definitely not doing that.
No big IPOs on startup archaeology.
No, not unless no.
Now, do you have any interest in traveling to other parts of the world to do some detecting?
Yeah, I'd love that. But it's so difficult and really risky. I mean, if you go to a lot of countries, they just don't have as sensible laws as Britain does, or generous probably is the better word.
Yeah,
not as generous. So if you find coins in, I think it might be Denmark, you might get a nice certificate and an Amazon voucher for finding that priceless, ring from the 1400s. You're not going to get what it's worth.
Gotcha.
Definitely, and in Italy, I think it definitely belongs to the government, whatever you find. Gotcha. And in some cases, gangs control a lot of the beaches. I mean, because it's quite lucrative going metal detecting in Italy. So I've heard that you're getting into some business there. It's not just old people in their tracks wandering around with sandwiches and detecting, as it's kind of portrayed on the TV sometimes. Yeah,
you're not gonna just wander from you're not gonna go detecting in another country without doing your homework first.
And the laws are very harsh on people that take anything out of the country, I guess rightly so. And I say the British don't have the best reputation with other people's artifacts. There's a growing call for the British Museum to return quite a few things where Egyptian artifacts and so on. So if I went to Greece metal detecting, I don't think that would go down very well.
Probably not. It'd be maybe being a little bit tone deaf, you might say.
Exactly.
Yeah. Is there anything that's like on that's sort of, you talked about like finding the gold coin is pretty rare. Is there anything that you're in sort of, not that you don't know what you find until you find it, but are there some things that you're aware of that you're like, this would be pretty sweet if I found one of these?
Yeah, I think I would definitely like a posy ring. So these are gold rings, really pure gold from the 1600s and 1500s, and they would often have a motto or a saying. You've heard of memento mori. A lot of the time, these things would have that on, or like I guess like a romantic poem or saying.
Yeah,
you would give it to somebody, and they're just really beautiful, and the text, looks like that kind of elven text in Lord of the Rings. It's really it's very special. Finding an intact ring with the gems still in is also even more. It's like a royal flush. You go from a flush to a royal flush if you find a medieval ring with the original sapphire in. And you wonder, how did they get sapphires as far as the United Kingdom back in the 1200s? That gemstone must have an amazing story going, from where it was found in Sri Lanka or wherever, Burma, to Europe.
So that's the things of that nature. You haven't found one yet, but it's
yeah. On the other end, on the less expensive end, I would love to find I think they're called a bulla, papal bulla, and these are like lead seals, so a really cheap metal, very heavy, but they were stamped with a portrait of the Pope, and they would go over a document or something, and you can find some really cool medieval portraits of the Pope on these little stamps.
Gotcha. Very cool. You shared at the top of our conversation that you had a friend it was in Canada, and he told you everything you needed to know. I'm curious. I know that you've been sharing with people about your passion for detecting. Have you passed along that advice to another person? Has anybody asked you for that same? Because they got inspired as well.
I've tried working on my niece and nephew. I was amazed this summer because I wanted to hang out with them and my cousin and take them to the beach. It was a sunny day, and I thought they're 6 and 9. And I thought, okay, they'll want to go to the beach and get fish and chips and ice creams and all that kind of stuff. No, they wanted to hang out with me and dig holes. So I was on cloud 9. I thought, this is amazing. Interested in all these old things and digging holes. Some kids might find that really boring, right? But they had their trowels and they were following me around and digging, and we actually found a Roman coin for each of them, so they were giddy with excitement about.
Oh man, yeah. I think the detecting gods were looking out for you, right?
Well, last hole we found a medieval silver coin, which is quite rare. It's not their occurrence. You definitely can't count on finding a medieval, and that was on the last hole. So that was a really nice day. And
that sounds like a hole in one. That sounds like a hole in one.
So, and they went to show and tell with pictures of what they found, and so that was special to me because they were taking an interest in hobby, and maybe they'll want to do it sometime.
Right. Oh, that's beautiful. This has been like extremely everything that I hoped. I was just curious to learn, curious to understand more about your passion. Is there anything that we haven't talked about that for anyone that's listening, that
well, if they're in the UK or even the US, actually, you can find a lot of the artifacts that metal detectorists have found on a thing called the Portable Antiquities Scheme. It's a bit of a mouthful, but the PAS, PAS.
Okay. Say it again if you could.
Portable Antiquities Scheme. I said that in my best.
Portable Antiquities Scheme.
What you said, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And so that is that like a catalog, or is that just an
online database of over 1.5 million things that mostly detectives found? And so you can type gold ring, Iron Age, and it will come up with all these beautiful specimens, and it will tell you all the details about where it was found and what it weighs. So you can just it's like if you've ever been kind of lost down a rabbit hole in Wikipedia, you can just get caught up in all these things. So there's that. I would recommend people look at that. I've got a YouTube channel with an army of like 83 followers called Metal Detecting with Bart. So
we'll be sure to include a link.
Check that out.
That in the show notes, as they say, for sure.
And I guess the last thing is we kind of covered the thrill of the hunt, but the things about it really is you don't always immediately know what you found or its significance. So another part of the hobby is identifying what it is and researching it. So you find a coin, but who's the monarch on it, and where was it made, and what does that Latin text mean? So that's a lot of, like, when I take it back to my parents, they really enjoy trying to research it. And then I guess the last part of the hobby that's really cool is the collecting and restoring. Actually, I love restoring what I've found. So I found like a gambling token from the 1600s that was all screwed up. The metal was twisted and it was covered in bronze disease. I sent it to a restorer, and they flattened it out, and it's absolutely beautiful now. So
nice.
There's a lot of joy to be had in restoring things back to their condition or something like that.
Yeah.
There's I think it's also very therapeutic to be out there on the field on your own, or even with a bunch of, when you're just out there in the elements, being in the here and now. And just living in the time that you're in, rather than I don't know, comparing yourself to what other people are doing, or wanting something that you don't have, or dwelling on the past. You're just in the present, and you're enjoying.
Yeah, I think about it like when I'm in the act of painting, and I'm just making something, that I'm just present to being in the moment is exactly right. So whether it's putting paint on a canvas or a metal detector over the land, just that opportunity to have a passion and an interest that really supports kind of being here, being now, being present, is is a worthwhile passion, worthwhile endeavor. So, and it's great that you found something that obviously you're extremely excited about.
Definitely my geek hobby, and I could just go forever. I think there's another thing that I've found really useful in just in terms of like just personal lessons is, I'm an only child. I'm quite competitive. I'm definitely, a collector, and I want to get all the things and have them all. So when I was first detecting, I had exclusive permission on a field, and then it was shared with the farmer decided to let other people on. And I found that very difficult at the start because it was kind of my calm place where I could just relax. But suddenly it gets competitive. But then after a year or two, one of the other detectorists said, "Why don't you come to our club?" And they invited me along, and I thought, all right, well, I'll try it out. It sounds like a nightmare to me because there'll be people, we'll all be digging holes and seeing who can get to the things first. But it was nothing like that. It was very collaborative, and people encouraging everybody else and how to be a better detectorist. And that individual showed me one day how to improve the settings. So I wasn't finding anything one day, and he just said, "Oh, well, yeah, let me have a tinker around with your machine," and completely changed the game for me and made the detector even better. So it helped me be less I don't know, jealous and competitive and kind of, individualistic, and be more kind of zen about everything. I thought, I'm not going to find everything. And it's been there for centuries, millennia. It wasn't meant to be found. It was meant to be found by somebody else, or someone else can find it. And it. And I don't know. I was sharing a few tips with somebody I met randomly in the field. Their detector didn't work, and so I said, "Oh, let me have a look at it." And I had a go at it, and they were new to the hobby, and they had it completely messed up. It was running on ultra high power, so they had so many signals they couldn't determine what was good and what was bad, and they had a bunch of things shut off, so they were just digging up junk. So it was really satisfying to help them. So I went full circle with with Mark inspiring me, and then perhaps not to the same degree helping, but starting to help others as I learn more.
Well, I think that's a good note to end on. Bart Smith, really appreciate the time. It was really enlightening and entertaining.
Thank you very much.
Stories from the heart, stories honest and true, the ones